Hey guys, welcome back to the Soulite. Did you have a good weekend? Well, here in Korea, we are remembering the 1,000-day anniversary of the Sewol Ferry sinking incident. So as we saw last week, was it only last week? When the president made her New Year's address, she couldn't even remember whether it was last year or 2 years before. No girl, it's all been almost 3 years since the Sewol sank. And that is when I would say the hearts of Korean people sank along with it. Let me explain. Let's rewind back to April 16th, 2014. There were hundreds of people aboard this ferry that was going from Incheon all the way to Jeju Island. On board was a senior class from a high school in Seoul with hundreds of kids. At the time, I was anchoring the evening news for Arirang TV, and so I slept in on the mornings. And that day, I got an alert on my phone that pops up, some of the hottest news that's going on in Korea. And usually I don't wake up for those, but for some reason I woke up, looked at my phone and thought, oh, well, this is probably not even gonna be a real big story because there was even like a picture of the sinking ship. And I was like, if they were able to get a news crew or any kind of person on a helicopter to the site, find it, take a picture, a photo, send it into the wire service agency. I was like, they got this in the bag. There was enough time for people to even have video of the accident. I thought in my head, wow, I'm glad at least they were able to go quickly to the site to get some news footage, because I thought like everybody would be rescued by then and you'd have essentially nobody left on the boat and there would be like a picture of an empty ship that was sinking. That's what I thought in my head. And so I just went back to sleep thinking, oh, by the time I wake up again, this is not even gonna be a news story. Why did I even wake up? Well, apparently it was a whole different world when I did wake up. So why do we see a sea of yellow ribbons? Why do we see the Sewol Ferry incident feature so prominently in the latest presidential impeachment scandal? In that moment, people realized that they have been betrayed by their country and they could no longer trust it. And more sadly, they didn't know what to do about it or whom they could voice it to. So when you're in a frustrated situation and you have your own personal perspective on things, that's when you get to see fingers point in all different directions, even though it's regarding the same incident. So we have the ferry sinking incident, and we have, at that time, allusions and some evidence of corruption, but it was like spotty. It was like, well, was it? Well, first of all, it did not look good that the captain jumped ship first and left the stranded passengers to die after telling them to stay in their cabins, and then was filmed drying out his wet cash on the rescue boat. People were pointing the finger at an irresponsible captain. People were pointing the finger at the irresponsible, inexperienced first mate that was driving the ship through choppy waters at the time. People were blaming the choppy waters. People were blaming the cargo on the boat that wasn't secured properly. People were blaming the safety regulations that were ignored through bribery that rebuilt the ship into a configuration that let it topple over more. People were blaming the ship's owner, saying that, oh, he was corrupt and in pursuit of profits and therefore led to horrible business practices that allowed people lax safety regulations. People were blaming the Coast Guard for their delayed or bungled response. And then people were blaming, oh, well, the ferry owner had actually put a clamp on the actions of the Coast Guard so that he could let his private marine service investigate the situation, thereby delaying the disaster response. What was baffling in most people's minds is that this did not follow a logical pattern where the passengers were placed first and that their lives were placed first. Even if we did not know what was going on, you could not hide the fact that a Coast Guard was just sitting right next to a sinking ship and not doing much. So then came the accusations that orders from above were conflicting with each other. So the theory is that if the marine company's owner has a lot of political sway and power, he can kind of control what the government agencies do. But who is the person that can go on top of a marine company owner that has extensive ties into the government? The president of the country. Now, this is what I didn't understand at the time, because honestly, I was thinking in my head, my goodness, how could a country run if the president has to be on the ground for every single disaster that is going on? That makes no sense. I did not think that that was even a possibility where the president had to be involved. Yes, this was a huge tragic crisis, but in my mind, I thought there should be systems set up within the government where these people should be saved without the president showing up. But in actuality, what happened was that a lot of people are saying, look, the president needed to be involved in this. Where was she? That's why there's this question of the missing 7 hours of Park Geun-hye on the ferry sinking day. Because I know it's kind of sad, but I think Korean people have already taken as given that she had to have been there to direct some responses, basically to break through ties of corruption, to look out for the passengers. So this whole chain of events makes it look like the priority was on either hiding something or protecting the butts of people in high positions. The priority was not on the passengers who were told to stay in their rooms while the ship was sinking. And so we saw for the past nearly 3 years people just pointing fingers in different directions, and the public getting a somewhat of an explanation that seemed to make sense. The ferry was overloaded because of corrupt practices. The main culprit was the owner of the shipping agency, whose body turned up about a month later in a field next to some soju bottles. Apparently the body was so decomposed, and there were suspicions that wasn't his body, because the body wouldn't have decomposed to that level under normal circumstances, some people said. And they said that the DNA test had matched the brother of the Sewol owner. Yeah, all he had to do was sprinkle some of his own hair and say like, boop, there's a match. Anyway, so that's hashtag suspicious in my book still. But the sad part is that I think nobody really cares about whether he got away with it and whether maybe he is living like a double life. So how does that come back to today? Well, now with the presidential scandal, you can point the finger all in the direction of President Park. And by pointing the finger at a central figure, we suddenly have the spoke of a wheel. And so by pointing the finger straight at President Park, you are, in essence, pointing the finger at all levels of the system. So that covers people in corporations, people in our judiciary, people in our legislature, people in the executive office, and all of us together as a society that let this wheel continue to run. Before, people were more willing to justify a dysfunctional system because it was lifting many people's votes. This dysfunctional system, for better or worse, was able to get Korea out of poverty and go into quick, rapid development to meet the modern era. But I think people now understand that we are at an inflection point where this same dysfunctional system that had carried us out of poverty in Korea may be the same system that can put us back into it. And people are seeing that this is a make or break moment. So I think this is why this is actually a real movement. This Candlelight Revolution is not just a marketing term, and it's not just people wanting to jump on the bandwagon and have a free outdoor concert on Saturday nights in Gwanghwamun. People, I think, are truly engaged in this democratic moment. It truly is Korea's Arab Spring, and there are people around the world looking with envy again at Korea to say, how did they do it? How did they do this revolution where they have obviously made democratic strides up until this point? The story is not over, of course, but even getting up to this point where the people have spoken, people are wondering, how did they do this so peacefully, in such an organized manner, and in a way that is reforming the system seemingly from within? We are definitely not seeing the elimination and toppling and coup d'etat of the institutions. We are seeing low levels of trust in the institution, but we are seeing people wanting to reform the system and not have chaos and revolution. And so I believe that now people are not going to be willing to go back to a time when they were afraid to speak up, to hold people who are in power accountable. So what do you think? What do you think Korea needs to do more of in order to carry this to the end and to hopefully see justice? Thanks again for sharing, liking, and commenting, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.